Hello. Today is episode 15 of our live virtual podcast. So we are wrapping this whole series up. Yes, we have talked about so many different topics as it relates to homeschooling. And so we are winding down and bringing the conversations to a close. Now, while I understand that many of you have more questions, so once a week, I'm going to try to pop in and do a live. So if you are watching this, please leave a comment and let me know what your questions are because I want to continually provide support for you. I also wanted to let you know that the Cleverly Changing podcast is a podcast that isn't just for homeschoolers. Some people are going to remote school their children. So many schools have gone virtual, many are practicing online learning. And so, as a parent who has been with my children, 90% of the time, I'm here to provide support. How do you make it through that homeschool journey? How do you survive being with your kids day in and day out? And so, that is what support this podcast has to offer you. So, the Cleverly Changing podcast is also an audio podcast. You can find us on cleverlychanging.com. If you scroll all the way to the top, there is a tab that says podcast, and you can listen to past episodes. So, also, I want to just introduce myself to you if you're not familiar with who I am. I am Elle Cole from the blog cleverlychanging.com. I am a mom to twins. My daughters are 11 and I started homeschooling since they were little. So this is our 7th official year of homeschooling and every year is different. So there is never a time in your homeschooling career where you feel like you have all of the answers. I have been doing this series for 15 days and I promise you, I don't have all the answers, but I do know how to make it work. And I know how to continue even when the going gets tough. The fact is, our children are relying on us for knowledge, for wisdom, and we don't have all of the answers. Sure, we can say, hey, let's Google it together, or let's learn together, let's find the answer together. But we have to be honest with our kids and say, hey, we don't have all the answers, but we can help you find the answers. We want to show our kids how to navigate this life, how to face what to do when they face adversity. So being a homeschooler, it's not all about just facilitating the academics for your child. It's really teaching your child how to handle life in all different aspects. One of the criticisms about homeschooling is socialization and the need for socialization. Many homeschoolers socialize in a variety of ways. So socialization to a veteran homeschooler is usually not ever an issue because there are tons of ways to socialize. What is an issue right now, though, is that we are in a pandemic. And so what homeschoolers usually do, like co-ops, field trips, and meetups with other families, play dates, those things have changed. So we have to kind of rethink the way that we homeschool our kids and socialize them. So this is a time where we all have to pull together and brainstorm. How can we maybe play virtual games? How can we get together and maybe go on a hike or do some outdoor activities that feel safer? And so we want to learn how to rethink the way that we socialize in a way that is safe, in a way that complies with social distancing, and lets our kids know that we have their best interests in mind. So I just wanted to thank you guys for tuning in day after day. If you missed a day, you can definitely catch one of the replays. You can either catch them here on Facebook in the video section of my fan page, or you can go to YouTube, and that's youtube.com/cleverlychanging to find any of the past episodes. So what I wanted to do today, I wanted to answer any of the additional questions that you may have, or I also wanted to kind of recap and let you know some of the things that really stood out to me from some of our past guests, and also things that I think that we all should keep in mind going forward. So let's start with day one of the series. Day one was all about introducing the series to you guys. And so with day one, we decided to answer some of the questions. Before this series began, I sent out a image on Instagram and I asked people questions. And so that's what we did the first day. So some of you may be interested in unschooling. If unschooling is something that is on your mind, how do you teach your kid from a self-directed pace where, you may not be very heavy on textbooks? How does that even work? So if that is something that you're interested in, I had a past guest named Akila Richards. She has a podcast, and her podcast is Raising Free People. It's actually Fear of the Free Child. And she recently just came out with a book called Raising Free People. And I've always admired her philosophy, which is why we had her on the podcast, because the way she is teaching her daughters to develop the skills and the characteristics that they already possess is very important and is honorable. We want our children to be confident people. They're not just, you'll hear the phrase, oh, my little mini me. Our children aren't really miniature little people like us. They're not small versions of us. They are their own people. They are individuals who have their own thoughts and their own personalities, and we have to honor that about them. We have to get to know them for who they are and cherish those things. So I invite you to look into Fear of the Free Child. It is a podcast all about unschooling. So if that's a philosophy that is attractive to you, I encourage you to look into that philosophy on her podcast. I love the thought of unschooling. I'm not 100% an unschooler, but I do try different methods of unschooling because I think there is some value there. But Akila is an expert on the subject. So if that is something that you really want to delve into, I invite you to listen to her podcast. So we have a question. Thank you for joining us, Charlene. I appreciate it. So let's see. The question is, have you ever used Time for Learning? It's an online platform for homeschool thoughts and opinions. So I can speak a little bit about Time for Learning. It is a popular homeschool method that I have seen many parents and my homeschool groups. When I first started thinking about online learning, for my children, Time for Learning was one of the platforms that I saw. Now, did I personally use it? No, because what I discovered when my kids were actually at that age, when I was considering it, they did not want to do online learning. So I actually used a different method, and I did look at the platform. I've heard great things about it, but I've also heard people say that when there is a platform that is completely free, it may have some issues. So if you're looking for perfection, you may not find that perfection that you seek because it's free. And usually things need money in order to perfect them. So maybe they need an editor, maybe they need things like that. I don't know the disadvantages of Time for Learning because I've actually never I've just seen the comments about them in the Facebook groups and heard from people who have used it, but I don't personally know how it is. And I can say that the people who have used it and liked it, they really liked it, which is why I had initially looked into it. My children, though, are more hands-on. They don't like, my kids don't necessarily like all computer work. Like I have to, um, write things on the board, make it more tactile. They're more kinesthetic learners. So that was issue why I didn't use that platform for them. Okay, so you say, let's see the next question. It says, it's a monthly cost for my daughter is $20 a month. So, okay, so that is, okay, so this is actually better. So platforms that cost even something that is as reasonable as $20 is usually better than something that's completely free, because I tried a completely free um, platform called Discovery K-12, and I did notice some issues with it, and it wasn't my favorite. So if time for learning is $20 from a month, then it's probably actually better than I first thought. So when I first heard of it, maybe it wasn't a cost, or maybe the cost was different, but that's been a long time ago. My kids have been doing this for 7 years, so that would have been in the earlier years, maybe the first and second, maybe they were like first and second grade. So I think that the fact that it's a $20 cost makes me even more willing to say, give it a try. You know, what I recommend that you do though, talk to some of the parents in the homeschool groups to see who has actually tried it. So I know there's a group called Black Homeschoolers. Now you can actually search. So if you go in one of the popular homeschool groups, you can also join a homeschool group for your particular area. So wherever you live, you just type in the name of where you live and homeschoolers. There might even be a time for learning homeschool group. You just have to type that into Facebook, into the platform, and you ask people. You could do a search first to see what people are saying about it, but then you can also ask people in the status section, hey guys, I'm interested in time for learning. What were your thoughts about it? And let them know the age of your child and also the grade of your child. Because a lot of times when people ask questions, it's really specific for the age and grade. So we can't just say, hey, yeah, this is great for all kids. So you do have to be clear about how old your child is. And if you know your child's learning style, I would say include that in your question as well, so that people who have more understanding, who have used it, can really direct you with more knowledge. So the more information you put into your comment or your question that you're asking in the group, the better people will be able to help you. So I'm sorry that I don't have personal experience with time for learning, but I do think that in the comments that I've seen about it, it was favorable. So I haven't heard anybody say anything negative about it. For me, it's just that I didn't want to use a online platform at the time when I was interested in it. So if anyone else has questions, just put your questions into the comment section. Today we're doing a recap, and we're also I'm making myself available. So if people have questions and they want to know more, I'm here to provide answers. Okay, so there is another comment. It says, thanks for your opinions. This is my first time homeschooling. So for a second grader, it seems to be very well put together for her age. That is awesome. And I think that, finding something that already lays it out is the best way to start. When I first started homeschooling, I used a classical method that was already laid out, and it made it much easier for me to feel like I know what to do next. And I think knowing where to start and what to do next is the hardest part of homeschooling, because once you get started and you're into the flow and you've learned your children's learning styles and you know what works for them, it can actually get a little bit easier, especially if you start planning, you talk to people you create communities, you join communities online, because there is a wealth of knowledge. You're not the first to start this. There are people who have been doing it for years. My husband was homeschooled, and we're not that young. So there are tons of people who are knowledgeable, who have been there before and are willing to answer your questions and share with you what they have learned. So I encourage you to ask around and join these groups, because I definitely joined the groups And I receive a lot of information that I find valuable, and I've been homeschooling for 7 years. So that's why I'm recommending that people join Facebook groups. If you want some Facebook group recommendations, I will definitely, um, I do have a blog post about it. So I have to find that particular blog post and share it with you. But in general, you want to look at your area, you want to look at the curriculum that you've chosen. And there are groups around whole curriculums. There are groups around philosophies. Earlier, I talked about unschooling. There are unschooling groups. Some people don't call it unschooling. Some people call it self-directed education. So that's something to keep in mind. There are Recently I did a conference with people who were doing the Waldorf philosophy and Charlotte Mason and Montessori. So all of those different philosophies have homeschool groups. So that is one way to find out more and resources that are all related to your interests and the homeschooling philosophy that you're interested in. There's also a group that I'm going to recommend, and it's called Surviving. Let me make sure I have the right name. I believe it's called Surviving. Let me see. There is a homeschool group. It's called Surviving Homeschool. Yes, it's on Facebook as Surviving Homeschool, and that group, I encourage any new homeschooler to join that group. Why am I saying join that group? Because it is made up of parents who are just now getting in this journey. Many of the people who came before, like who were homeschooling already, there are some of them in the group as well. But so the organizer who created the group, her name is Denise, and she's been homeschooling for a while. And she created this group to provide support to people who were finding themselves homeschooling as a result of the pandemic. And so if that is something, that community is just a warm place where you will feel valued, they'll listen to your questions, and they'll point you in the right direction. So that is a group that you can join. There's also another group, and I've left it in the comment section as well, but I'm in another group where I have a friend. She was actually my homeschool mentor in many ways because she homeschooled her kids. Her kids are older than my kids, but she has a group and it's called Regular, and then it's a lowercase a and asterisk asterisk Homeschoolers. So that is another group that I recommend because the people in the group, there are some people who are brand new to homeschooling and some people who have been homeschooling for who are just now homeschooling. So it's a great mix. So if you have questions and you just need camaraderie, if you need support, those are two groups that I think are wonderful places for that support. So I would highly recommend that you join them. But there's also just all kinds of groups. So you kind of have to do a search and see, which group do you feel most comfortable joining? So definitely check that out. And I want to kind of go back and tell you about the different episodes. So if you want to check out any of the past topics that we've had on Homeschool Hints, the video series, go to my YouTube. That's youtube.com/cleverlychanging. And the first one is answering homeschool questions. The second one is I want to start homeschooling, but I have questions. And for that episode, we had a guest. Her name was Gianna. She is a mom of 3, and she was going to send her oldest to a virtual school, but she was going to homeschool her youngest children. And so that's what some people are doing as well. Just because you decide to homeschool doesn't mean you're going to homeschool all of your kids. You may only decide to homeschool one. It is totally up to you. You may want to homeschool 2 and put the other one in school. And I just want you to know that whatever method of education you choose for your kids, there is support out there. So definitely check that episode out. Episode number 3 talks about practical tips while working from home. So most of us have to work. We don't have that luxury of just living off of one income if we live in a 2-parent household. So if you are a parent who has to work, there are people who are homeschooling their children effectively and also working. So that is the podcast to go to for different tips and tricks on how to make it work while you're homeschooling. So definitely check out episode 3 for practical working while homeschooling tips. Episode number 4 is how to gather your homeschooling supplies on a budget. Homeschooling is not cheap. There is no, currently, I don't know of any grants that exist just for homeschoolers. There are some states, I've heard of California, that will provide homeschoolers a stipend. I don't know how true that is. I don't live in California, but I know in the state that I live in, I do not get a tax break for homeschooling, nor do I get a monetary stipend for homeschooling. Hopefully, this will change. There has been legislation that has been proposed that children's education dollars will follow the child, and that was introduced by Dr. Rand Paul. So I'm hoping that that will be something that homeschoolers can look forward to in the future. But for the most part, in my homeschooling years, we have had to fund the education of our children, just like if they went to private school or whatever. We had to fund that. Now, if you live in an area that provides Connections Academy or Discover or K-12, those resources are paid for by the public school system. Not in every state because they're not available in my state, but they do exist. So those are some of the resources that you can also look into, and they will send you everything you need so that your children is taught well. And your child will be assigned a teacher that is online, that communicates with your child, and you communicate. So it's kind of like a partnership. So look into that. As far as homeschool budgets go, you can check any of the videos on YouTube and you'll see my recommended supply list. There are definitely some things that you don't need in homeschooling, and it can be tempted to just purchase a whole lot of stuff. And just to let you know, one of the places that is a great resource, I'm not really one that likes thrift stores. I don't. They remind me of mothballs and old gum. I mean, yeah, like not the best visual picture, but I don't care for them. But what I do like their education materials, like for books. Oh, I have built my children's homeschool library from the thrift store. What I like about them is, especially even different from books that come from the library. The library, you may have, that book has been to a lot of homes and it's been checked out by a lot of people. But the books at the thrift store, usually, sometimes I can find brand new books, but they often haven't been read as much as a book from the library. So that has always been one of my go-to resources for all kinds of things. Like I've seen telescopes there. Just you would be surprised by the things that you can find at a thrift store. So that is really just one of my top places for building things. When my children were little, I had gotten their desk from, because we used to have desks. Now I have a table. Yesterday I did my homeschool video. I showed my homeschool room. So if you want to see that, you can check the archives, the video archives for that video. But now we use a table. But when they were little, they had desks. And I got their desk from the thrift store. It was in great condition, looks just like it had not been used, and it worked perfectly for my home. Bookshelves, it's a great place to get bookshelves and things like that. I also have been able to get bookshelves from IKEA. So if you have an IKEA in your community, that is another great place where they have a section called the As Is section. So if you are looking to do things on a budget, check out the As Is section and see what you can put together. But every homeschool needs a storage center where you're storing everything. All right, so the next topic that we talked about is the logistics of homeschooling. What are the state requirements? The first place that all of us should start is with our state. What does the state require of the parent who is interested in homeschooling? So check out that podcast if you want to learn about the logistics and how to make it work from a legal standpoint. The next one is episode number 6. So the logistics of homeschooling is episode number 5. Episode number 6 is resources and tools for preschool and elementary students. I just talked about one of my favorite places, the thrift store, as one of the places that you can get supplementary materials like a bookshelf and books and things. And so in the preschool section, the preschool and elementary years, I showed some of the things that I've actually purchased there. And they're all still in great condition, and we've had them for many years. Episode number 7. So we talked to Vanessa. She has a homeschool guide that I want you guys to check out. She has started co-ops in the past. Definitely download her guide, especially for those of you who have younger children. So the early years, so from K all the way through 3rd grade or 4th grade, check that guide out to find some really great Waldorf inspired materials on how to get started. And that's really great because it deals a lot with nature and it's not a lot of book work, because at that age, a lot of kids don't like to write and they're not really into the formal, very sophisticated type of schooling. So check that episode out if you want more resources on that. Episode 9, online educational resources. I share the ones that I'm personally familiar with. So if you are interested in that and what my favorites are, my kids are older now, so I do allow them to use more online resources than I did when they were younger. Episode number 10 is how to help your child navigate virtual schooling this year. And we had a guest who has been teaching for over 20 years, and she provided us with her expertise. That was Marcia. So if you are deciding to virtually school your child, check out that episode to learn some of the tips that she shared. Episode 11, we talked about co-ops, the difference between co-ops, umbrellas, tutorials, and homeschool groups. There is, in fact, a difference. So if you are looking for a community support group, you can definitely check that virtual video out so that you can find out what are some of the questions that you should be asking. And episode 12 was with Kevin. He is a teacher. He also has a YouTube channel, Mr. Tom's Adventures on YouTube. So tune in to learn how you can share science from your home with your kids. You may be doing an online school, but you may also want to supplement their education with additional resources. And you can do that by looking into that particular episode and also checking out his YouTube channel as well. And so yesterday, I also showed my homeschool room. You don't have to have everything that we have. Really, you just need a spot that you can designate and a place to put your books. So you don't have to have a whole room, but you do want to have a designated learning area, because you want your kids to know where it's kind of like a subliminal message. When your kid knows this is where my learning takes place, their mind and their body sometimes will perk up and they will become more attentive. So that's why I highly recommend people have a designated area. Not that you're going to always homeschool there, but that homeschool can regularly take place in that particular area. So guys, that is it. That is it. What I do want to do to really wrap up this whole series, I want to offer you guys a giveaway. So definitely tell your friends about my series, but I am going to post a giveaway on my blog today. So it will be up by 8 p.m. today. I'm going to post a giveaway where I will be personally giving someone $50 to jumpstart their homeschool room. So I can't necessarily give everybody everything for their homeschool journey, and I would love to, but I can gift $50 to help get someone started. So I'll be doing a giveaway, a $50 giveaway to end this series out. And so definitely check back by 8 p.m. today. Check on my blog, cleverlychanging.com, and I'll give everybody about a week to enter. And so you can share it with your friends. And I just thank you guys for participating. Continue to share the videos. And if there are topics that you want me to cover, I will definitely reach out to an expert if it's not a topic that I'm 100% familiar with myself. So I am wishing all of you a wonderful, happy school year. All right, bye now.